Hey there, EB here on the Anything But Bland weekly update. Sorry I'm late, 9 minutes late. I was on a interview I was having with a reporter, and I apologize, but let's just jump in. Last night was a fascinating election night. The gubernatorial races in New Jersey and Virginia, along with the mayoral election in New York, as well as the three Supreme Court seats in Pennsylvania and Prop 50, which is to the redistricting vote in California, were all interesting. These were shots that were heard around the world. I think what we saw last night was because President Trump was not on the ballot, that the turnout for the Republicans, the MAGA Republicans that support him, just wasn't there in all of these votes. But more importantly, the independents, the blacks, and Hispanics migrated from the Republican side, which Trump enjoyed in the election last November of 2024 for him to become the president the second time. These Hispanic voters went back to the Democratic Party because I think what we saw is a repudiation of the Trump's economic policy of the past 9 months. They are not seeing, the world is not seeing, meaning the citizens of the US, by and large, are not seeing prices on groceries and everything going down. Everything that Trump promised about the economy is not happening. What you're seeing is higher prices. I don't think the people agree with the tariffs. That's a case that was before the Supreme Court today, and we'll talk about that the justices were highly skeptical of Trump's authority on tariffs. But what you really see is I think the public has had enough of Trump talking about a $90,000 gilded gold ballroom, bragging about tearing down the Lincoln bedroom's bathroom and rebuilding it in marble and gold. I think they're highly offended that he wants to collect $230 million from the taxpayers, supposedly for his costs and legal fees and damages as a result of him being criminally charged. Again, those criminal charges, none of them were adjudicated on the merits for the documents case as well as the January 6th insurrection. The one case that he was tried on and is a convicted fraudster, even though they've reversed the monetary amount, the monetary fine of $525 million, the fraud conviction still stands. I think the country appreciates what he's done foreign policy wise, which has been extraordinary. And I said that last week. But domestically, I think he's totally tone deaf. I think what ended up happening is the Republicans and Trump thought that if we shut down the government or let it shut down by the Democrats, because we won't increase the Obamacare subsidies, which run out at the end of the year, that the public will blame the Democrats, especially in Virginia, because there are so many federal workers in Virginia who are not getting a paycheck. Remember, these are furloughed employees, so they can't collect unemployment. What is surprising is the backlash is against the Republicans and against Trump. Abigail Stanberg won the gubernatorial race by crushing the Republican lieutenant governor, African American candidate. That was a race that Trump really wasn't concerned about. He did politic for Jack Ciattarelli in Jersey. He had a town hall meeting the night before the election against Mikey Sherrill. He got crushed. That's the third time that Ciattarelli has ran for governor of New Jersey. Enough's enough. And the Zohran Mamdani win is not surprising. I mean, he polled that way all year. He crushed Cuomo in the primary, in the Democratic primary. I think Cuomo did a good job as an independent and finally caught his legs the past couple of weeks, where he talked about Mamdani having a resume that was thinner than a paper cocktail napkin, and that Trump would slice through him like a knife through warm butter. But that's an outlier. And I think what the Democrats learned is run the quality candidates for the election that you're trying to win. And Mamdani, who had a 1% notoriety rating at the start of the year, ran a campaign where he got the youth vote out. The New York vote was the highest vote percentage in 50 years to 1969. 2 million people or more voted. But he got the young people who are engaged. And amazingly, he got 33% of the Jews to vote for him, a guy who is a known anti Semite, who's made some controversial statements about the Intifada and Israel's right to exist. Yes, and the latter part of the campaign, he said he's against anti Semitism and yada, yada, yada. But we know what his true beliefs are. And I think you saw the true personality last night. The one that gave the victory speech, hey, Randy Chavis, good afternoon, who gave the victory speech was different than the guy that campaigned. The guy that campaigned was a happy warrior, talked about affordability, talked about the cost of groceries, the cost of transportation. The guy last night was more rabid and militant, saying that I'm going to go after President Trump, turn your volume up. I think it scared a lot of the Democrats, the traditional Democrats, middle of the road Democrats, about what type of mayor he's going to be. Now, remember, in New York, all these tax increases have to go through Governor Hochul and through the state legislature. Governor Hochul is not going to raise taxes, not when she's in an election year. She's also, unlike a lot of states, the governor in New York can fire and remove the mayor if the mayor is not doing a job that she views is in the best interests of the citizens of New York. So let's see how Mamdani's going to govern. I think it's going to be a rough road for him. I will not be going back to New York. I will not spend my dollars there. I do believe that a lot of New York businesses are going to go to Texas, Dallas, and Florida. They call Dallas now Y'all Street. Instead of Wall Street, it's Y'all Street. And I think that a lot of the big brokerage houses and banks are going to start moving to Texas where there's no state income tax. Mamdani has said he's going to raise the taxes on the rich, and there's already a migration outside of New York City where people are moving to Greenwich, Connecticut, and Westchester, New York. And I think we've already seen that Broadway has not been filled to capacity in many of its shows. Restaurants are closing. I think Mamdani's going to have a hard time, and I think it's going to be interesting to see if President Trump can cut off certain type of funding for the citizens in New York. But let's wait and see. But the win by Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey, she didn't run the greatest of campaigns. I think in May, when she was asked, what are your priorities? She had some kind of word salad answer and couldn't say it's lowering utility costs or lowering costs of housing or lowering the cost of transportation. Zohran Mamdani had a bite-sized message that was easy to digest, and getting that young people involved is interesting. I think if I'm Chuck Schumer, I'm really worried about my Senate seat. I think that AOC, who I do not like, is going to run for his seat, and I think she's going to ultimately win. I do believe, though, that Elaine Stefanik is going to give Kathy Hochul a run for her money in the gubernatorial race next year. We're finally done with Andrew Cuomo. He's an old school politician in a new state, new school era. He ran a horrible campaign. You can blame it on Curtis Sliwa, the guardian angel who ran as a Republican. But even if he stepped out, the amount of the victory that Mamdani had over Cuomo wouldn't have changed, and he still would have won. The amount of the victory would have changed, but he still would have won. So Cuomo's done forever. Certainly Gavin Newsom looks like a superstar because he went after Trump on the Proposition 50, and California in droves said they're going to create 5 new Democratic districts out of Republican districts. Right now, I think there's 9 Republican House members and like 40 Democrats as to 9 Republicans. They're going to lose 5 seats. I agree with what Newsom wanted to do because Trump is trying to change the rules in Texas, North Carolina, and other states like that. So the election is interesting. Trump, of course, came out and said, this isn't my fault. Trump wasn't on the ballot. Trump was on the ballot. And Trump's going to be on the ballot in the midterms. And if this is a bellwether of what may happen in the midterms. I think it's going to be a bloodbath. I think if you run the right candidates for the right office, uh, don't run a Mamdani in New Jersey or in Purple, Virginia. Run somebody like Mikey Sherrill, who was a helicopter pilot in the military. Run somebody like Abigail in Virginia, who won the gubernatorial, the first woman to become governor of Virginia, who was a CIA agent. Those are the kind of people you run in those kind of um, blue red states, those purple states. So I think it's interesting. You know, 20 to 40% of the far left, I think, may agree a little bit, 20% with Mamdani, but 80% of the Democrats don't agree with his policies, don't want a socialist Democrat in office, in a national office. So, the far right, they got problems too. Just like the far left, the Democrats have problems. The far right has problems. People like Tucker Carlson putting on his podcast Nick Fuentes, who is a absolute white supremacist who wants blacks in jail and wants Jews out of the banking and finance industry. It's not good enough to have him on and say, well, it's just journalism. I thought it was a great comment by Mitch McConnell, who said, you don't have to be a true conservative and give a platform to people who are so offensive like Nick Fuentes. He thinks it degraded the Republicans and Tucker Carlson to have somebody like him on. So good for Mitch McConnell. So, Americans are paying attention. Joe Rogan specifically said that this isn't what we voted for. And that is specifically, we all voted, some of us, and some of us didn't. I didn't vote for Trump, but some of us voted for him because he said he was going to take all the illegal criminals, rapists, drug addicts off the street and deport them. And he was going to close the borders. Great. What he's done, though, is he's gone way beyond that. And he's pulling people out of schools and people from restaurants, law-abiding people who pay taxes. And if you ask, 78% of the public doesn't want those people deported. They don't want those people arrested. They wanted the drug dealers and the criminals that he said. And Trump, Sunday night in his 60 Minutes interview, said that he hasn't gone far enough in deporting people. Are you kidding me? He's going to go further? What's further? Ripping apart newborn babies at a hospital? And I found it so ironic that he sued 60 Minutes and got $16 million because they edited Kamala Harris's interview that she had during the presidential run. But yet Sunday night, they edited his interview and did it at his request. There's some things that he wanted it out. So I think we should sue, as citizens, CBS for the same thing that he sued on, that they edited out his interview. He said some amazing, hateful things during that interview that were edited out. So, I think that that's a real problem. Donald Trump was not on the ballot in 17, 18, 2019, 21, 22, 23, and he won't be on 25. And on every election that he's not on the ballot, there's a loss for him. So that's going to be a big thing. The problem for the Republicans is the same problem that the Democrats had. Joe Biden didn't announce basically he was running again for president until almost it was too late for any other Democrat to really step forward and run. And so it was inevitable that he was going to be the nominee, obviously, as the incumbent. Well, the same thing exists for the Republicans. Trump cannot run for a third term, but he's teasing every week, whether it's Steve Bannon or him or other of his sycophants are saying he's going to get a third term. We've come up with a way that it can get around the Constitution. So all these Republicans who normally would be getting ready to run for president and forming PACs and raising money are sitting on their powder, because if they come forward and say, I'm going to run, Trump will stand them down, because if he's not going to run, he's picking his hand-picked candidate to run. And that's going to be either J.D. Vance or his daughter Ivanka or his son Don Jr. So that's really interesting. Today, the commissioner of the fire department of New York, who's Jewish, turned in his resignation as a result of Mamdani winning. The Supreme Court is hearing the tariff case today on whether President Trump has the power as the chief executive officer and president to unilaterally create tariffs. Highly skeptical questions being asked by John Roberts as well as some of the other conservative justices, because this is a function of Congress. Congress is the one that puts tariffs in place. They own the power of the purse pursuant to the Constitution. So it'll be interesting to see whether they uphold his right to do the tariffs. 40% of the voters in Virginia and New Jersey said the sole reason they cast their ballots was to oppose Trump. So that's pretty high. Trump's approval rating now is down at 34%, lowest in the history of any time during his presidency. Nancy Pelosi came out and said a blistering attack on Trump on election eve, called him a vile person, said that he's the worst human that our country has ever produced. She says, how can I say this? It will sound like I'm an awful person. But she said, Trump is just a vile creature, the worst thing on the face of the earth. Asked whether she really thought that, she said, I do, because he's the president of the United States and he doesn't honor the Constitution or the rule of law of the United States. She said, in fact, he's turned the Supreme Court into a rogue court. He's abolished the House of Representatives. He's chilled the press, and he's scared people who are in this country legally. So it's not only scaring the illegals, he's scaring the people that are in this country illegally. A U.S. judge permanently blocked the Trump order requiring voters to prove citizenship. Now, he has a tendency to lose on the district court and win on appeals. That happened this past week. On the district court level, they ruled importantly that he didn't have the right to federalize National Guard and send troops in, Army troops. The appellate court reversed the district court this week and said he does have that power. J.D. Vance said something interesting this week. He said that he loves his wife dearly, but he's holding out hope that one day she will convert from Hindu to Christianity. And he got really lambasted for that. I'm not going to get inside his marriage and what they should do or shouldn't do, but that's a tough thing to say about your wife publicly. That's all I will say. Nancy Mace. Guys, what she did at that Charleston airport is who she is. Don't be surprised. Maya Angelou says, when somebody shows you who they are, believe it. She showed you who she is. That is Nancy Mace. She is somebody that curses people out. She is somebody that thinks that she's entitled. The people who are in the House of Representatives put their pants on one leg at a time, just like us. It has gone to her head. She thinks that she's different. She thinks that she can talk down to people like Donald Trump does. She's not Donald Trump, okay? She humiliated and used profanity against TSA and airport security, people who are not getting paid because of the government shutdown. Are you kidding me? She knew that she was being filmed and she said it. And now she's doubling down. She's suing the airport commission for defamation, saying that she has a right, she should have been picked up and protected, that she shouldn't have had to walk through the airport. I agree. But nobody did this on purpose, like Trump saying that they stopped the escalator in the UN on purpose, or they shut down where his speech was, so he could read his speech, the teleprompter that they shut down. They didn't do this to Nancy on purpose, but she is someone who is obnoxious. She's somebody who doesn't respect people, and she's somebody, there's a screw loose in this woman that she could say these things to other people. So I totally agree that she deserves security. I totally agree that there are people out there that could confront her and hurt her. But you do not berate people who are doing their job and not getting paid, especially during a government shutdown, and do it publicly. She just is tone deaf. The Michigan terror suspects who were planning a Paris-style attack on bars and nightclubs, the feds show them taking target practice. They were arrested. They said they wanted to kill 200 people. Good for them. A year after suing CBS again for editing the Kamala interview, Trump wanted them to edit his own interview. So again, the Democrats should sue CBS. He actually said that he didn't know the guy that he pardoned with Bitcoin. Now, what a statement to make. I don't know who he is, but yet I pardoned him. He knew who he is. That guy helped fund Hamas. The Bitcoin that he put through his exchange created money for Hamas to attack Israel. And his family, his sons, have made over $1 billion trading with this guy that he gave a pardon to. Trump tried to kneecap the Republicans by saying that they should end the filibuster, and therefore, if they go to a majority vote, the majority of Republicans in the Senate can vote to reopen the government. John Thune and many Republicans, Barrasso from Wyoming, they do not want the filibuster to be removed because they know that the Republicans won't always be in power. And so if the Democrats are in power, then the Democrats will use the majority instead of the filibuster to get things done. The filibuster gives a voice to minority parties to be able to have some kind of influence and input in legislation. And I agree, even though it's something that was created after the Constitution was done, I agree that you should not revoke the filibuster. I think the filibuster gives you balanced legislation. And let me explain something to you. Food insecurity in this country is so real. It's one thing that you take away somebody's health care. They have the right to go to an emergency room. An emergency room at a hospital has to treat you under the Emergency Room Medical Treatment Act. But when you take away people's food and they have to scramble between food banks and churches instead of getting their regular SNAP benefits or the WIC benefits, people get desperate. They get desperate to feed their family. And if they're desperate, that's when things are going to happen. That's when people, God forbid, are going to burglarize a house or rob a grocery store. That's one thing that I want us to think about. And I'm really concerned about the fact that people are starving in this country, that there are federal workers who are going without a paycheck and can't afford food, can't afford their rent or their mortgage. And at the same time, the President of the United States is having a great Gatsby party at Mar-a-Lago, where, you remember F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote The Great Gatsby, and, all the people were so tone deaf on all the other people that were suffering during the Depression. That's what it looked like, that these fat cat wealthy billionaires are so excited about partying with Trump and all their other rich cronies that the people who are suffering, who aren't able to work, the TSA is having to work. The air traffic controllers are having to work and they're not getting paid. Folks, soon they're going to stop. They're going to have to go get jobs elsewhere to feed their family. And we're coming up to the holiday season where traffic is important. This has to get resolved. A UPS cargo plane crashed. 4 people were killed on board outside of Louisville. A total of 9 people were killed. It was a huge fire. Thank God it wasn't a passenger plane, but my heart goes out for these pilots who were on board. The country is suffering, and Trump keeps proclaiming what he's doing to renovate the White House. How could his aides not tell him, President Trump, don't focus on that right now. Focus on the suffering that's going on in our country. Military workers went unpaid for the first time yesterday. And 2 judges told Trump that he had to tap into the reserves. Our food programs have reserves, and he was unwilling to tap into them. So we'll see how long it takes. Baldoni's defamation, $400 million defamation suit against Blake Lively was dismissed by the court. He never amended his complaint this week. Um, Brian Kelly was fired by LSU last weekend. He was blasted by former players and staffers that he didn't even know their name, that he was so out of touch with them. Again, he's one of those old school coaches. Don't think he's going to work in the SEC. His how he coaches, it may work at a Michigan State or maybe an Oklahoma State, but not in the SEC. Dabo Swinney must change. They lost to Duke last week, first time in 40 years in the early 1980s that Duke beat Clemson at Death Valley. What defense would let up 45 points or 46 points that Clemson let up? Dabo has to stop promoting from within. He has to go out and get the best and the brightest. I think he's losing a connection with his players. He certainly has more 4- and 5-star talent than almost any other program in the country, but yet he can't seem to do anything with it. They have not beat a Power 5 program, I think, in almost 2 years, so he is going to have to change. Shane Beamer is going to have to be the same way. Shane Beamer just doesn't have relationships with great coordinators because he wasn't a coordinator himself. He fired Mike Shula this week as the offensive coordinator. They got crushed by Mississippi Ole Miss last weekend. Shane was accused of paying a 5-star recruit $10,000 to come to South Carolina last weekend on a recruiting visit. The former Maryland football coach, Mike Losky, doubled down and said this is cheating. It's not against the rules, but now they're paying kids to come to a recruiting weekend. Nick Saban was supposedly offered $60 million for 3 years to go back to LSU, where a national championship was won by him, and coach for 3 years and then handpick his successor. Question is whether he's going to do that. I said that Brian Kelly may end up going to Oklahoma State University. Let's look at the jobs that are available. Florida, Auburn, Arkansas, LSU, Oklahoma State, Penn State, Virginia Tech, and there'll probably be 5 or 6 more. Listen, guys, if you go to the SEC, you are going to lose 2 or 3 games a year. There's some programs that if you lose 2 or 3 games a year, you'll keep your job forever. South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State. But LSU, Alabama, Florida, those kind of programs, they expect you never to lose more than 1 game a year. It is impossible. I would never, ever want to be a coach in the SEC. If I did, it would be under a 10-year rolling agreement that if you fired me, you would owe me the remainder of my contract. And the alumni who are paying this money to these coaches and the NIL money, they're the ones that are dictating to the athletic director and the coaches how the program is going to run. Hugh Freeze got fired for Auburn. They were, I think, 4 and 5. It turns out that he was golfing too much, that a lot of the alumni go to the same country club that he did, and noticed that he was on the tee sheets on Friday before a Saturday game where he was golfing, and he golfed too much. The Dodgers won the World Series. It was an amazing series. The last 2 games went into extra innings. Dave Roberts, the manager of the Dodgers, who played for the Boston Red Sox when they won the World Championship in the early 2000s with David Ortiz and Nomar Garciaparra. He's a great manager, the best in baseball. Brought in Yamamoto. Even after he pitched in Game 6, he closed it out in Game 7, was the MVP. Ohtani, while he didn't hit a lot of home runs in the World Series, he did have a lot of hits, so good for them. Victor Conti, that's a name from the past. He was the owner of Balco Steroids during the steroid scandal with Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds and some other players who played for the Mets. He died at the age of 75. You must watch the Allen Iverson 3-episode special on Prime. You'll learn so much about AI. I'm a huge AI fan who played for the Sixers. You'll learn about his tough childhood, how he got arrested and convicted for mayhem at a bowling alley and served time, how John Thompson gave him an opportunity at Georgetown, and then ultimately when he was drafted #1 in the draft, how he changed the face of the NBA by um, some would say acting like a hoodlum, but this is who he was, and it inspired a whole generation of people. I think you should watch it, which is interesting. Dick Cheney, who was 84 years old, an amazing patriot, former vice president of the United States, former secretary of defense, former representative from Wyoming, former chief of staff, basically held every major position in the Republican Party, died at 84. He died principally because he was against Donald Trump and what was being done to Liz Cheney, his daughter. And he came out and said that Trump is one of the most dangerous politicians our country ever produced and does not represent the ideals of the Republican Party. So Trump didn't acknowledge his death, but lowered the flags to half staff because it's required when an executive dies, a former president or VP. It has to, by law, go to half mast. We are handling an interesting case involving the Saluda County Clerk of Court, Sherry Coleman. She's a lovely woman. She's being sued by a former potential judicial candidate named Christian Spradley, who's a partner in a local law firm. He was running for a judgeship last year, and she was solicited regarding her opinions about him, and she gave them in a return ballot to the Judicial Merits Commission, and she wrote a letter to the President of the Senate and to the Speaker of the House, Merle Smith, on her letterhead as Saluda County Clerk of Court, and she gave an honest assessment of it, as a result of what she said and others said. This person withdrew his nomination, even though he was deemed qualified by the Judicial Merit Selection Committee. And now he's chosen to sue this lovely lady for defamation and for what she said as a result in her official capacity and being solicited. So we are representing her. It's going to be an interesting case. Let's look at some of the weekly questions. What a week. I commented already on the Nancy Mace airport confrontations. I think it's unbelievable. I also have commented on the New York City elections. I have not commented on the over $100,000 that Mark Moore at the Maynard Nexon law firm is going to be paid for supposedly investigating R.J. May and whether he should be kicked out ethically from the House of Representatives. I just think that's a lot of money. Sandy Smith is doing well. She's portrayed well in the new Hulu series. I spoke at length this morning about the Hulu series. You know, Dick Harpootlian went out and started saying, oh, it's fiction. And Alex Murdaugh said it's a disgrace. It doesn't accurately represent my relationship with my family. First of all, how is Alex watching a Hulu series in maximum security prison? Are they getting that kind of apps on their phones, or do they have cable TV? But this isn't a Ken Burns documentary on the Revolutionary War. This is somewhat Hollywood and somewhat real documentary. The material facts are true. Alex Murdaugh was a habitual drunk. Alex Murdaugh abused, even according to his own attorney's words, opioids. Alex Murdaugh was abusive at times to his wife and his family. Alex Murdaugh leveraged his relationships, his family name, and the reputation of his law firm. Alex Murdaugh bullied people. He bullied colleagues. He was nasty to his brother Randy. He bullied clients. He was indifferent to clients. He bullied Russ Lafitte at Palmetto State Bank to continue to give him money. He was a father who overindulged Paul. Look, I have all the feelings in the world for Paul. When that series started, you don't like Paul. You don't like what he stood for and did. But then you begin to understand he turned out the way he did because the parents didn't set boundaries for him. And so all the ways that Alex was portrayed, all the ways that Paul was portrayed and Maggie are true. Sure, the timeline for Gloria Satterfield was off. I didn't like that they made her carry suitcases from the car. That never happened when she fell from the stairs. But, you know, changing something from Tuesday to Wednesday, that happens all the time. You know, Dick was upset that a short, fat actor played him. Look, Dick Harpootlian is 5 feet 8 inches tall, folks. He's not going to be able to play adult basketball. No, he's not a fat person. But that's how they, portrayed him, because that's how people view him, as a bellicose man, somebody that's verbally abusive, that says smart ass things. So, is the series supposed to be spot on? No, but it does show who the victims are, who the people who got their money stolen. It shows the character of Alex Murdaugh. It's based on some shocking events, and it also is based on a podcast, the Murdaugh Murders podcast. So, George Santos is out, and now he's going to say he's going to repay his restitutions, and he's going to try to do prison reform. So that's it. I talked about Zoran Mandami's election. I talked about the gubernatorial elections. I talked about Proposition 50 in California.
You got freaking mad.
I talked about the role of the federal government in the shutdown and what's going on. And I think I've talked about what the 2025 midterm elections are going to look like. So I appreciate everybody listening. I spoke this week at the Orangeburg Rotary Club about the Murdaugh case in my book, Anything But Bland. If you want to go to learn more about my law firm, go to www.blandrichter.com. If you haven't bought my book, please buy it, Anything But Bland, off Amazon. I will sign it. I will inscribe it. All you got to do is send it to me, and I will send it back. Randy Chavis says, good afternoon. Kathleen Jensen says, thanks for my insight. Shannon Cook says, happy Wednesday. Randy says, happy Wednesday. Kathleen Jansen is right. Nothing is ever Trump's fault. It's always somebody else's fault. Randy says, scream it loud for us. Sherry Coronado says, I don't know how people could not understand Alex's psychopathy and how that affects his actions. Randy says, if people will do their research instead of believing everything that people post, we might get somewhere. Randy Chavis says she's 36-year-old mom and has 5 kids and feels that she is not optimistic about her future, and that makes me sad. Shannon Cook says, preach EB. Virginia Rodriguez says, I think Trump wants to remove potential registered Democrats by arresting everyone. With all the renovations, he's not leaving. He'll stay there if we have another Republican president as their consultant. I agree. He's not renovating these ballrooms not to use it. He's not renovating the plane given to him by Qatari government not to use it. Randy Chavis says, I personally know the sisters he took advantage of and did dirty. So heartbreaking. Shannon says, Shannon Cook, the Hulu series rocks. Shannon Cook says, my book is great. Thank you so much. And Virginia Rodriguez says, great update. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great rest of the week. EB out.